Testing, testing. We got Lori. We've got you. Hello, Jep. Macy, do we have you yet? Hello, BB. Great.
Can you imagine what it's like for me to gaze upon a girl like you? My heart's burning so, with love so hot and oh so true. I can't imagine what it's like for you to be so close to what is me, in a blaze of...
All right. Here we are. Okay, Jep. That's cool. Week 4, lesson 4. Just a reminder that lesson 3, which was last week, which was all about rhythm and tempo, is... Oop. Look at the TV. Yes, test. Becky, can you hear me? Becky, can you hear me? I got Lori. I think I had Shu. BB said she could hear. Is your sound off? Why am I asking? She can't hear me. Is your sound muted? Can try watching on a separate web browser outside of SL. There's the link. All right, so I think we have almost everybody. So yes, a reminder, lesson 3 is on YouTube, following the same page as the link you are watching right now. This will also be on YouTube. I have a video clip that I'll be showing that'll be edited out, so there won't be any monetization problems. And lesson 2 is also up there, so plenty of Mr. Professor Y to go around. Today's lesson goes a little further with lesson 2, which was about intervals and accidentals. We're going to introduce the construction of a major scale and introduce key signatures. But first of all, let's do a review of last week's lesson. We'll start with time signatures. Raise your hand if you could tell me what time signature this is called. What is this time signature? Raise your hand. Let me know. Anyone? Anyone? Time signature is these two numbers. No guesses? Shoe. What's it called? Tell me. 4-4. Very good. So how many beats does this top number mean are in a measure, in one measure of 4-4 time? How many beats or counts are in that measure? Raise your hand. You're lagged. I don't know what that means. No one? How many beats or counts are in a 4-4 measure? BB, how many counts? Jep, raise your hand. But yes, that's correct. That is not, well, it is a G clef. This is a G clef, but it's not a G key. Well done, Jep. Okay, but raise your hand first. Let me call on you. So yeah, there are 4 beats in a measure, and a reminder that the number on the bottom means that the quarter note, which we will talk about here, how many beats in this? How many beats per measure in this time signature? BB, raise your hand. But yes, that's correct. 3. All right. Very good. What is the duration and the name of this note? Jep. Raise your hand and then let me call on you, Jep. What is the name and the duration? How long does this note get held out? How many counts? BB, tell me. What's the name and how many counts? What's the duration of that note? I think that's actually right, although the terminology we're going to use is called a whole note. And a whole note gets 4 counts. So if you were playing the note through a 4/4 time measure, it'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. Ah, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then off. Right? This note, may you remember what this one is? I'll have to look up, BB, whether or not that's actually called an open note. But think of a whole note. And whole in this case is not the open space in the ground, but as in something as being a whole, WHOLE, like the whole thing. BB, what? What's the note duration and name of this note? It is a G note, but it's not a whole G note. The whole G note is the circle without the stem. This is a half note. A half note has the circle, but it has a stem going either up or down. But it is a G note because every good benefactor deserves fun. This is the G note. This is also the G clef because the curl, the lower curl of the sign, curls around the G line. So this is a G clef. Good guesses, BB. All right, one more. Well, actually, another one. What is this note called? Becky, Shu, Lori, you too can raise your hand. Hold this here. Hold on. Macy, you can as well. What's this note? If we had a whole note, which was 4, and a half note, which was 2, this is, take a half note and divide it in half. So if a half note is 2 and you divide it in half to get this note, what's it called? What is half of a half? Jep. That is not a full note. It's a quarter note. So whole notes divided in half. Half note gets half the amount as a whole note. So 4 for the whole note, 2 for the half note. This is a quarter note. Half of a half is a quarter, right? So if a whole note gets 4, then a quarter note gets 1. Great. Now today, before we get back into intervals and scales and key signatures, I thought I would choose this scene from the movie Big because it perfectly shows how much music and movies can intermingle with each other. Also note, as the concept of the piano is introduced, which keys on the piano they play specifically.
Plus you can't take a
So, did anybody notice when they were playing, did they ever touch any of the black keys, or do they stay on the white keys? If you notice, they stayed on the white keys the whole time because they were playing a song that was in the key of C, which uses no black keys or accidentals. The accidentals, anybody remember what an accidental is? This is from 2 weeks ago. What's an accidental? I realize this is a perfect place to get smart answers, but musically speaking, what is an accidental? Anyone? Anyone? They're so shy today. These black keys represent the accidentals in music. Well done, Macy. And they have two different names, but this hashtag here is a sharp, and this sort of cursive looking B is a flat. We talked about this 2 weeks ago. And the sharp raises the pitch of a note 1/2 step. There's a half step right there. So C, 1/2 step above C, C sharp. All right, Becky, sorry about that. I didn't hear any responses, and so I realize there is a delay, so I will try and slow down a little bit. Can anybody tell me what a flat does to a note? So if a sharp raises a note 1/2 step, what does a flat do to a note? What does a flat do to this D that my mouse is on right now? Becky, what does it do? It lowers it a half step. Well done. Okay, and one more question. How many half steps are there in a whole step? So here is a half step. Here is a whole step. How many half steps are in one whole step? Becky. How many half steps in 2? Well done. So, let's carry on with the lesson for today. A scale is a group of notes arranged in a definite pattern of whole steps and half steps. All the notes in a scale relate back to a common note called the key note. Now, for instance, a key note in the D major scale, the key note for the D major scale is the note D. All that means is all the notes in the D major scale together as a whole are in the key of D major, and D is the key note. So as I mentioned a little bit ago, a scale is a pattern of whole steps and half steps. The arrangement of steps that construct a major scale is as follows. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Now, by knowing this progression of steps, we're going to be able to construct a major scale on any given note, every given key note. Now, fortunately, there is an easier way to remember this progression. You can break this pattern up into what is called a tetrachord. A tetrachord is a scale of 4 notes, the interval of the first and last being a perfect fourth. Let me show you an example of this on your Perfect Piano app. So, if we have a C note, that's going to have 4 notes in it. And the interval between this note and this note is a fourth. Now, when I learned how to recognize a fourth called an interval, it was in the United States. I think it's the same in the UK. So, those of you that are in the UK, if you've heard a bride coming down the aisle, you hear, "Here comes the bride." Da 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 da. Whenever you hear that, that is a fourth. Ba 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 da, ba 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 da. So that "Here comes the bride," that note is a fourth, that interval is a fourth, this note is a fourth. 1, 2, 3, 4. And there is also a second tetrachord that starts here and goes up the same 4 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Da 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 da. It's the same thing. Now, these 2 tetrachords are separated by a whole step, which means that you can memorize it as 2 tetrachords separated by a whole step. So it would be whole step, half, whole step, half. Or in other words, 1 tetrachord, 1 whole step, 1 tetrachord. Let me get rid of... So we have to do a little bit of math. Let me show you exactly what I mean. So, in the C scale, I think we're going to talk about that right now. In the C major scale, you're going to start out you're going to build a C major scale using this concept. So you start out with C. You're going to go up 1 whole step to D, another whole step to E, a half step to F, a whole step to G, whole step to A, whole step to B, and C. Just like that. C, D, E. Now, E and F and B and C are the only 2 note pairings that are separated by a half step. These ones are separated by a whole step. You have to get all the way up to here to get these notes. C, D, F, G, A, B, C. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. And as we saw in the film, the C major scale is the only scale that is made up. What do you mean you see only half steps? You see only half steps here because you're not seeing accidentals. See, if you only did a half step for this C, it would go to C sharp, which is not this note. It is an accidental of this note. It would be this note with a sharp next to it. You'd have to go all the way to the next one to get this D note. But if you look at the piano, it shows you that the interval between E and F, there is no accidental, there is no black key. So that is why in the C scale, if we follow along this major scale building block, you do a whole step here, a whole step here to E, then you only need a half step to get to F. Then you separate it out. One whole step, then do another tetrachord. Whole step, half step. Are there any questions? I don't know what that means, baby. Do you get it, or do you just... How can I help you? You know what whole steps are, and you know what half steps are, right? We all know that there are two half steps in a whole step, right? So the way to build a C major chord is using this pattern, this progression. There is no other way to do it. So all you need to do is memorize C major scale, or rather a major scale, because we'll see that this works with other notes, keynotes. We'll see that a little bit later. We'll do one more. But all you need to remember is whole step, half step, whole step, half step. Right? So, let's take this concept and try it using a different key note. So instead of using the C note as our key note, we're going to use the G note and try building a G major scale. Just double check and make sure that I didn't. Oh, good grief, sorry. You didn't have your visual cues. That didn't help at all. So let me try this again, a little more visually. So let's go back to the C major scale for a second. We'll just... So here is the C. And if you're looking at your keyboard, there's the accidental notes here. Then you start with C. You do one whole note, to D, another whole note up to E. Remember that E and F and B and C are only separated by half steps, so you only need to go a half step to the next note, and that happens to be the building block of the scale, so 1/2 step to F. Now we're going to do our next whole step from F to G, whole step from G to A, whole step from A to B, and B and C are separated only by a half step, which happens to be how we build this one. Half, or whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Okay. Now let's continue on to the G major scale. So we're starting with the G major scale. You're going to scrub down to where, let's go down into the yellow. So we're going to start out lower. But we're still going to do the same thing. Half step, no. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. All right, so G major scale, starting on G, going up one whole step to A, another whole step to B, a half step to C, whole step to D, whole step to E. Now, this is where it gets different because you need to do a whole step to get the major scale, but this note goes to this note is only a half step. So in order to go a whole step from E, you have to go from E to F sharp. And then from F sharp, 1/2 step up to G again. All right? See the difference? There's one accidental used in the construction of a G major scale, and that is this F sharp. So to make this easier to read when people are writing music, if you put a sharp up here on this F line, every good benefactor deserves fun, and you run over here, and you put a hashtag or a sharp sign in this space before the time signature, what you get is what is called a key signature. This is the key signature for the G major scale, and there's one accidental, one sharp, and it is an F sharp. So whenever you see a sharp placed on this line, F, or if you see the sharp placed on this line for the bass clef, good boyfriends don't forget anniversaries. F line is the second one in the bass clef. You still have the F sharp there. It's still the same key. It's still the same scale of G major. So this is all we're going to cover today, is how to build and then how to recognize a key signature. So we now know that in order to build a G major scale, you need to add one sharp. The F sharp to the G, right? let's try it again, only this time we're going to use a keynote for the keynote of D. Using this same concept. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. So let's move the piano so that our D is here. We're going to go a full step, whole step, sorry, to the E. Let me get my glasses on so I can see what's going on here. So we have D, whole step to E. Here's where we make our first accidental. We have to do an F sharp here. Then we do our first half step. So D, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. How many accidentals are in the D scale? We had one in the G scale. Raise your hand if you can tell me how many sharps are in the D scale. I just played them for you. How many were there? Raise your hand. BB, how many sharps? Two. Well done. So, if we look at the key signature for the D scale, we're going to see that this is how it looks. There's your F sharp. And the second sharp is, what's that note? It's the third space. Anybody remember the spaces? F-A blank E. The word is face. What is this note? Now raise your hand next time. But yes, that's right. C. So it's a C sharp. You have an F sharp and a C sharp. Oops. Yeah. That's a D scale. That's a C sharp. Yes, very good, BB. You're nailing it. All right, let's do one more. Let's do one starting with the keynote of an A. We're going to go back. We're going to use this as our example. We're going to scrub down into the yellow because we don't want to get too high. Starting with an A. And we're going to do the same thing to build up. Do-do-do-do-do-do. Baby shark. Do-do-do-do-do-do. Okay. And I want to get that song in my head. So, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So we're starting at A. Going to do a whole step. We're coming to our first accidental. Whole step. A. Whole step. Whole step. Whoops. A. Whole step. Half step. Whole step. Whole step. Whole step. Half step. A. Whole step. Whole step. Half step. Whole step. Whole step. Whole step. Half step. How many sharps am I playing? How many sharps are in the key of A? The A scale. How many keys? Louise, how many? There are 3 sharps. Well done. And as we did before, if we look at the key signature for an A, the key of A, there's our F sharp. That is a C sharp. And there's a new one. Who can guess what this note is? It's above the line for good. Every good benefactor deserves fun. If this line is F, what is the space above it? Based on the alphabet. What's after F? Raise your hand. Louise, make sure you raise your hand. But yes, that's right. It is a G sharp. So A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. Well done, guys. This is our lesson for today. I didn't want to get too far into it, but next week we're going to talk about, now that we've introduced, no, that's okay. Now that we've introduced scales and keys, we're going to attempt to show you, looking at key signatures, ways to recognize easily what key we are in when we're looking at a piece of music. But this is the end of the lesson for today. Good job, guys. Good job, BB, and welcome aboard St. Elizabeth's. It's great to have you here. So that's my show, gang. Oh, and the Stormfront Blues Band is all warming up over at Snowy River. If anybody's interested, come on out. So that's my class for today, guys. Ladies. All right. Thank you, guys, and we'll see you next week.